Okay. All right. Well, welcome everyone. I am so excited for this conversation. My name is Allison Campbell. If you don't know me, I'm the founder of unBurnt, a company focused on burnout prevention solutions and new employee well-being trainings, workshops, retreats, and more. And so I'm just so excited, so honored. And it's just such a pleasure to welcome Jess Ringgenberg here today. If you don't know Jess, which I think some of you do, if you don't know and you're watching back, Jess is just a powerhouse. And so I want to do a quick intro before we kick it off. We're here today to talk about the science of modern motherhood. Couldn't love that more. There's so much to dig into. But before we dive in and I turn it over to Jess, a couple things. One, we want to make this super interactive. So come off mute, feel free to pop questions in the chat. We're going to dig into some of the research study, and then Jess and I are going to have kind of an interactive conversation. But please feel free to come off mute or any questions in the chat. I'll be watching the chat as we're having this conversation. And yeah, we want this to be fun. So quick intro, if you don't already know Jess. She's a former Fortune 500 leader. She's the founder of ELIXR Consulting and Coaching. She's also the head coach of Society of Working Moms, this incredible community that I'm so privileged and excited to be a member of. Jess and I got connected about 9 or 10 months ago. And, I have to say, she's an incredible human. She has been so supportive of my founder journey. And I consider her a virtual colleague, like an extension of my inner circle, and frankly, just a friend. And so she's incredible. I'm so honored to have her here today. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jess. Let's dive in.
Reflecting everything back at you. If you don't have a virtual community of women, whether you're inside an organization or you're a solo founder or a stay-at-home mom, whatever your journey is, find your people, because it's just so much easier. So I've really enjoyed becoming friends with you as well, Allison. This topic, this conversation is so meaningful and so personal. I am thrilled to be having this conversation, whether it's 5 minutes, 30 minutes, or 3 hours, count me in. I'll preface by saying, like, come off video, stay off video, whatever works for you, with a baby, no baby. Please participate, please engage. I want to hear from you. We're a small, intimate group, so let's chat. Let's see, 5 years ago, I was working in biotech in the healthcare industry, and my world went crumbling down. Like, all the scaffolding that I had built my life on was pulled from underneath of me. And I had recognized that feeling before. It was the first time I became a mother 11 years ago with my first son, and then again after I had my second son. And then at the peak pinnacle of my career with 2 young children, I looked in the mirror and truly didn't recognize who I was. And I was working in women's health care, and then I worked in rare disease. So I was in the space that we should have language to understand what I was going through, which was a disconnected existential journey of self, and I had nothing. I couldn't explain to my husband, to my colleagues, and to anybody what I was going through, because I didn't really know what I was going through. So, like, heart emoji, show of hands, or drop in the chat. Like, have you ever had that moment where you're like, who am I? What is this all for? Is this it for the rest of my life? Like, what like what is this? And so I did what I always do, which is I wanted to learn. I wanted to understand what it was. And I found a word that changed everything for me. And the word was matrescence. Matrescence. Drop in the chat if you've heard it, or thumbs up if you've heard it before. It's similar to the term adolescence, which is this developmental stage a human goes through. And it was coined by a anthropologist named Dr. Dana Raphael. It was further modernized by a Columbia psychologist named Dr. Aurelie Ethan. And what she said was, you know what, Dr. Dana Raphael got it right. The term matrescence means that when a child is born, so is a mother. What she didn't get right was that it evolves. It's not just this stage of becoming, it's a constant identity shift. What I went through 5 years ago was an identity crisis. The world that I had built for my whole life changed, and nobody told me that I would change along with it. And so I built this company, ELIXR, thinking we would support mothers, working mothers. We would bring coaching frameworks and matrescence into the world. But it wasn't enough. When I looked at the data that was available around modern motherhood, we were missing some parts of it. So we kicked off a study last year, the ELIXR Modern Motherhood study, partnered with Pam Cohen, who's a sociologist in the motherhood space. You can download it, the full report now. I wanted to understand, what does modern motherhood mean today? What does modern matrescence mean today? And how can we understand language so that we can use it as preventative care? I don't want to just treat women who are in burnout, breakdown, identity crisis. I want women to have an understanding how to prepare for each phase of motherhood. And what we found in our survey is that there are 5 defined phases of matrescence. Anticipation, which is the invisible work motherhood before motherhood even begins, IVF, IUI, miscarriages. And not only is this stage invisible for women as they're navigating family planning, it is invisible in the workplace. Leaders, benefit providers, organizations. Listen, let's think about it. This workforce was built in the industrial era in the 1920s. And then in the 1950s, women said, we want to be in the workplace, let us in. And we did, but we assimilated with shoulder pads in the 80s and we're like, we're just like you. And we deleted motherhood somewhere along the way. So even in these early family planning stages, we're showing up in the workplace with this huge part of ourselves invisible, and it's not really valued or recognized on the other side as well. And in the anticipation, we found that 30% of mothers feel adequately supported by their employers, which means 70% do not. 7 out of 10 women are navigating miscarriages, IUI, IVF, family planning, financial scarcity on their own. And these are your top talent who we want to retain in the workplace. We also found that transformation, phase 2, the moment you become a mother. So anticipation is family planning and pregnancy. Transformation is, okay, you're a mom, now what? It's those first 2 years of MRI imaging where we can see brains rewire and you're cognitively rewiring and attuning to a new version of yourself. And in this stage, 70% of mothers in the first 2 years feel like they're struggling with personal identity shifts. And that return to work is like the biggest hurdle, right? You show up back to work expected to be the same person you were. We live in a bounce back culture. And guess what? I think we can all agree there is no bounce back. Navigation is middle motherhood when your children are ages 3 to 17. And we found in this phase, in all of the organizational work we do, this is the longest phase of matrescence. It's that middle motherhood is the most invisible, the most unrecognized. And 69% of mothers report work-life integration stress. I think we can all agree there's no balance. And if you're a work-life balance advocate, I suggest expanding to a way you look at it. Balance makes us feel like there's some equality and perfection, and it doesn't exist. It's a constant shifting in priorities. Navigation, this was like a profound part of our research report, because what we found was that motherhood doesn't end when our children leave the home. It just shifts. Caregiving changes. And in navigation, 69% of mothers with adult children report that they have career stagnation, or that they're invisible in the workplace. For example, 80% of mothers in this stage said that their career contributions aren't recognized. So it's like really this out of body of, my children don't really need me. Who am I at work? They don't see me. It's a huge identity crisis for women in the later stages of motherhood. And then finally, the legacy stage, which is the 5th phase of motherhood. It's grandmotherhood, it's sandwich generation, it's raising your children and your aging parents, it's doing all the things. And women reported ageism in the workplace. So this 5th phase of legacy value in the workplace was incredibly invisible for women. And this is preparedness for all of us on this call today. Again, we're a smaller group, but think about when we know what's coming for us or what the challenge is, we can at least feel empowered in our own journey. We also found that there's 3 pillars of modern motherhood, which is expanding upon the invisible load, which gets a bad rap. And what we found is that the bad weight of motherhood, the invisible load, is actually the leadership acceleration of motherhood, right? The reality is it's damn hard. It's an emotional journey. It's the always doing, it's the dishes and the mental load and the juggling. But for us as mothers, for women in the workplace, it's also incredibly valuable in executive functioning, executive decision making, emotional regulation, and it's the ultimate leadership accelerator. So what we do with this research report is to say, like, hey, we all know that matrescence exists. We deserve to use this language. I challenge you to share this story, this language today with your friends and family who matter. to advocate for change in the workplace, because motherhood doesn't have to be invisible. We can create change even in the best in class organizations. There's always room for improvement. And I hope that this information allows you to define like where you are at. So I'll ask you, what stage or what phase of matrescence are you in? Are you family planning right now? Are you in your transformation stage, which is your mother in 0 to 2? Are you in that long middle motherhood stage, the constant navigation? Are you in evolution, or are you in legacy? So anticipation, transformation, navigation, evolution, and legacy. And what's coming for you on the other side, mamas. So thanks so much, Allison, for having us. This is just a sneak peek. There's a full 32-page research report. And then next month we're launching, or I'm sorry, this month we're launching a guide where we digest the research report into what does this information mean for me as an individual. Middle motherhood, long middles. Like we need more O's in long middle stage.
Yes, to stretch it out. Yes. Jess, thank you so much. So informative. I personally have so many questions, so many thoughts. I'm excited to dig in further. Before I do, if anyone has questions, again, just wanted to invite, pop in the chat, come off mute, come off video. We have the space to ask questions of Jess about this research study, so we can definitely take advantage. I'm excited. So you go first. Again, so much to dive into here.
Please come, all the questions, any questions, personal, professional, research related, like whatever. I'm here to just chat with all of you.
Yes, no, I love it. And so I'm curious to get a sense because, there's, I think, just such a gap, as you mentioned, in understanding, particularly from middle motherhood on. I think we have a lot of work to still do around, leaves, paid leaves, supporting moms, both before, during, and after a maternity leave. But there is, a lot of emphasis on that, particularly because you're actually leaving your role, like the company, the team needs to make sure the work is covered. But then you come back. And I think sometimes there's this misconception that, to your point, you do just bounce back and you go right back to who you were, pre-motherhood. So I'd love to get a sense if anything came up in the study around correlation between that chunk of time, that middle motherhood period, and what you found with
Yes.
folks leaving the workplace, not feeling supported. Is there higher turnover? So they're not leaving the workforce, or, but they are actually just transitioning to new companies. Like, would love, and I just threw a lot at you, but would love to dig into
Yeah.
that piece of it more.
No, I mean, I think that's great. If you look at the general state of the workforce, 43% of women leave in the first, 1 to 5 years of having children. Another 10% leave in those middle stages of motherhood. What we found in our research report is, those middle moms, they're not necessarily leaving the workforce, they're leaving for other companies. And just generally speaking, 86% of mothers will stay for greater support. So I think the leave comes from that identity shift in middle motherhood. So career stagnation. For example, we make a decision in our early career, this is what we're going to do for the rest of our life. It feels really sticky to feel like I'm a new person now. I know I said I wanted to do this for the last 20 years, but what do I actually want to do? So career mobility, cross-functional exposure inside of an organization, leaders who are bringing these conversations to performance reviews, they get to retain those working mothers because they're creating an environment to say, we're in this together. This isn't just a performance review. This is also career planning. And the organizations that have career coaching, for example, they're also emphasizing that we're not meant to do this alone. Like, how can I be a strategic thought partner to you? So the leaving still exists. It's not as severe. It's this cliff of retention and early motherhood. It's a different, like, long drain on our workforce in middle motherhood, but mostly it's leaving because, women feel stuck in the middle. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, super helpful. Shelly, I saw you come on video. Hello, welcome. Did you have a question?
Oh, I do have a question. Jess, I'm just curious. I know you've been out, not just over the last few weeks while you've been talking about your research in companies, but you've been working in companies for, I think more than a year, maybe 2 years now. And I'm just curious, what kind of response and reaction are you receiving? So I'm kind of in my mind thinking about the evolution of DEI in the workplace. And for a long time, it felt like companies were engaged in that space to check the box, right? Like I've checked the box, I can fill out the survey, I can say we're doing this. When in the reality, like employees weren't feeling a difference or support in that area. And so I'm just curious, kind of what kind of reaction you're getting. And do you feel like companies are really trying to make a difference, or are employers like giving this lip service because they have a few employees that have raised their hands and said, this is really important. And so like it's a focus now, but maybe in 6 months, a year, 2 years from now, when times get tough, we don't have time for this anymore. So just
Yeah.
kind of curious what kind of response you're getting.
Absolutely. I mean, I think about, when when I was in the healthcare industry, we were taking commercialized products to market, like trying to convince clinicians in the healthcare industry, it's safe to use this. Here's the data behind it. You should care about it. Here's why. And I think about the science of modern motherhood very similar. Like, what's the data companies need to hear to care about this? What's the language we need to use so that they can resource and support the working moms inside their organization? For the last 2 years, we've been on an awareness campaign, like literally just bringing awareness to a very invisible topic. I look at my mother and mothers before us, and they didn't even talk about caregiving in the workplace. So now you have a generation of women who are vocally speaking about it. So to not recognize it is a huge miss because it's happening. I would say the palette is there for these conversations. I think we engaged with like 15 orgs last year. And survey results are 86% of mothers say matrescence at work matters. So regardless of leadership level, like working mothers want to hear this language. And what we hear from women, if it's like a community group, an ERG, working moms, women in, where are the leaders? Like, why aren't our leaders in these conversations? So I think there's a disconnect to say they're investing and providing for the women. They definitely want more cultural change and recognition at the leadership level. But then that's what we're doing now. Like, we're in an implementation stage with ELIXR 2, which is here's the data, here's the reality, to pretend that there's not a science to the motherhood journey and that it's not a loss and impact your bottom line is a miss, and here's what you can do about it. And I know our research showed leaders aren't equipped to have uncomfortable conversations in the workplace, whether that's just general caregiving or working motherhood. So let's assume no intent here and say that leaders want to support working mothers. They just need support in how to. So I think that's coming too, which is the next wave of how do we prepare organizations for the 73% of employees that are caregivers and the 76% of mothers that participate in the workforce.
Yeah, that's really great to hear. Thank you so much for answering that.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Any other questions from the group? I have so many more. So I'm gonna keep going, Jess, if that works. Again, feel free.
Hit me, girl.
I appreciate it. So I'm curious to get a sense, based on the research and the work that you're doing in organizations, give us some tips on what best practice looks like, right? So both, it's a two-part question, both from a leadership perspective, if an employee is coming to you and saying, I need more support, what are some ways in which they can get that support? What does best practice look like? And then let me pause there. I'll follow up with part 2 after this.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so many, what does good look like? The first good is like for us as a community of women on a call, I'm assuming all in some throes of motherhood, is giving ourselves permission to renegotiate career, redefine success, understand what this stage and season and phase looks like for us. Because that's like the invisible change we can make. That's the lift that we can carry, which is, who am I right now? What do I want in this world and life? How can I champion and advocate for change just within myself? Asking for help at home, creating a community, asking, the random mom at drop off, let's go get coffee. I don't have any friends right now. Or asking a colleague like, hey, would you be willing to mentor me in the workplace? So advocacy shows up in so many places in motherhood, and that's an easy way to create change. What good looks like for organizations is creating a benefit program that aligns with the 5 phases so that we're creating some sort of support metrics. Organizations think motherhood is a singular event. Like, it's a one time you go have a baby, and like, we supported you with bare bones mat leave, good luck to you. So understanding that it's a constant evolution of support, and training and understanding what does unconscious bias look like in the workplace. Listen, we talk a lot about the gender pay gap, but research actually shows it's the motherhood penalty. It's not inherently the gender gap. It's women having children that creates the gap in pay. And it also comes from the unconscious bias from leaders. It's not vindictive or malicious. It's just a lack of understanding that you're bringing assumptions into so many conversations, engagements, hires, promotions. And so what would a world of curiosity look like in the workplace? So I think it's a culture shift. It's building communities inside of organizations. It's in our research study, the fact that 80% of mothers don't have support at home from their family and friends tells me they're working and they want support at work too. Like, so what does community at work, real meaningful community look like? So I know that's a lot, but good looks like so many different layers and levels of change, and it starts with these conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when we think about things like gender pay gap headlines, it really is because folks are sort of falling off the ladder. And so it's not, it still happens, but it's not as frequently like for like job, women are getting paid less. Still happens, still a problem. But it's increasingly, when you look in aggregate at the averages, there are less women holding the leadership positions. And therefore, when you're looking across education level, you're looking at pay bands across different, from executive to entry level, it's those averages that get skewed because there are less women who, potentially are making it to those board seats, the CEO top spots. I just had a webinar on Monday, only 53 women at the helm of Fortune 500 companies, right? So less than 10%, or just a little over 10%, I should say. So much to dig into. You gave so much great advice in that awesome roundup. The part two is for women, for working moms, for us. How do we evaluate? Because it's really, I think, when you're in this stage of mother, or any stage, I should say, of motherhood, I'm speaking for myself in middle motherhood, we don't have less ambition. Like, we want to continue to show up, do our best work. We want to contribute, but sometimes it just feels like it's stacked. And so whether you're evaluating new opportunities internally at your current organization, or trying to figure out maybe a new environment and make a shift, can you give us any tips for evaluating from the outside looking in what good looks like, or questions to ask, like how to really understand where the support lies?
Absolutely. And I saw Christy come off camera, so I was going to did you have a question too? I wanted to give you space, and then Allison, I'll definitely come back to answer yours as well.
Yes, and thank you for seeing Christy.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, hi. Thank you. I was just curious. I have a background in sociology, and so like the sociology piece is fascinating. And young women not having as many kids now, trend of, I think they're looking at our generation saying, "Holy shit, that looks terrible." We're trying to balance what you're trying to harmonize. It looks like painful. So a lot of them choosing not to. Did you think studies like this will kind of help that generation sort of, I don't know, whatever it is, whatever they want to do, or just maybe understand it a little more? Because I feel like it's just a black hole and they're like, that looks bad, but I don't know what else there is. So like,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Great question. It's funny because I think it was Chapel Roan, I don't know how to say her name, was just on an
Yeah.
interview, and she was like, all my friends with kids look miserable. Listen, like, I think we can all agree, like, heart emoji so hard, that this is damn hard. Like, modern motherhood is incredibly difficult, and it is also incredibly beautiful and rewarding. And I think we have decided that this world is black and white, and there's this beautiful paradox of motherhood, which is why I purposely in the research report, I don't want to talk about the invisible load in a negative light anymore. Like, how else can we amplify the reality that when our brain rewires, remodels, and attunes to a newborn, it also makes us incredibly valuable, efficient, and emotionally regulated professionally. So like, there's a paradox of the hard leads to grit, resilience, and value in the workplace. So my hope is that the report is, when it's ambiguous and not defined, it feels like whatever our brain wants to come up with through the lens of negativity bias. And so if we put language and definitions and science behind it, then maybe it won't feel as scary or fearful. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. I hope that we can work with young women, right, to like help them understand. So I think this is a really good start. So thank you.
Motherly put out a report, recently around Gen Z not really wanting to have children. Like, for the first time ever, the hesitation exists, and it's there. And there's a speaker, Dr. Catherine Edwards, who spoke at a Mom Congress talk recently, or Moms First, I can't remember, who said there's like 3 economical reasons why we need women to have children, and we need to keep procreating. Like it's a sign of a healthy economy, right? So there's so many reasons there. And yes, it's hard. I think as we're getting more authentic and comfortable with vulnerability on social media, we need to also put the science and the reality behind it, Christy. And so I think having a social scientist partnered with me on the research report, that you'll find some value in the language there.
Thank you.
Allison, I know you had asked me a question. We've got 2 minutes left. I'm happy to like drop in some DMs on LinkedIn or continue that, but I do want to like, is there any other questions, or like, does this resonate with you? Is this meaningful? Like what is missing? What do we need to research more of? These conversations are deeply impactful for everything we're trying to do at ELIXR.
To take in. So if everyone's absorbing, that's cool too. Yeah, there's.
Listen, I did a good job. It's fine. Just give me a round of a hand. We're done here. No, but please download the report. Please sign up for a newsletter. You know, stay in contact, in touch with me. I'm a real person. If I don't know you on LinkedIn, come find me. And Allison, thank you so much for having me today.
Yes, thank you so much for joining. I'm going to send the recording. So once this replay gets downloaded, I'll send the recording. I'll send links so everyone can find Jess, can find ELIXR, can find Society of Working Moms and unBurnt. And if you have any questions, similarly, I'm a real human. You can reply to that email. And just so thankful, Jess, again, for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a beautiful day out there. So good meeting you all.
Take care.
Thanks, Allison. Thanks, Jess. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.